Hey there, and welcome to this week's From the Vault episode from the Magdalen House podcast. We are a 501c3 nonprofit organization based in Dallas, Texas, and known affectionately by many as Maggie's. Every first and third Wednesday, we bring you a new release. In our From the Vault episodes, we share past podcast releases from our 3 different podcast series, Recover Ed, Recovered Interviews with Alcoholics, and Hope for the Family. Our podcasts aim to connect, inspire, and educate alcoholics, loved ones, and the community to the Magdalen House and the services we offer. We're so glad you're here. Thanks for listening.
Okay. Well, Cindy, thank you so much for coming back and doing this with us again. We have a new group of ladies, so they weren't here for your last one. So I'm just excited that our new ladies now get to experience what you have to share, and so I just am really appreciative of you being here.
It's an honor.
Awesome, thank you. Do you mind, Cindy, first just giving us some background information about yourself? I know of what led you to get sober this time.
Mm-hmm. You do know, like what led me to get sober this time?
Yes. Well, I was about to say, I know you've been, what I usually say is what led you to Alcoholics Anonymous. But from last time you were here, I know that you were in Alcoholics Anonymous for a long time before you actually got sober this time. So
That's right.
That's why I changed my wording to that.
You know, it's funny. My last drink was on January the 18th of 2003. And it was actually cough syrup that I drank, Robitussin cough syrup. And I was driving a car and I ran a red light and nothing happened. By God's grace, nothing really happened. But I had a moment of clarity that I really had to do something about this. And it was going to have to take 100% of me to do it. I had been in AA before. I had worked the steps back in the 80s, but I worked kind of a disjointed version of them. I mostly just went to discussion meetings and that sort of thing. But in 1999, I was like many of you, I finally found out exactly what was wrong with me for the first time. I found out that I truly had an allergy of the body and an obsession of the mind. And I started going to the primary purpose group. This was in 99. And I stayed sober. I threw myself into the program. I did everything. But then I got very obsessed with my job. At that time I was teaching school and it was like I switched addictions or something. I just became absolutely obsessed with my job. I mean, to the point that I would get up at 4 a.m. to do lesson plans, just really wanting everything to be perfect. And in that time period, I developed a lot of resentments and I wasn't talking to my sponsor about it. And so in December of 2002, around Christmas time, I drank some Robitussin cough syrup over the holidays. And then I just started drinking it every day. And then on January the 18th, I had my last one. And that just sort of showed me the level of dishonesty that I had, that somehow I could beat the system of drinking by drinking Robitussin cough syrup. Which, by the way, if you've never done that, it will make you crazy as a loon. Anyway, that scared me when I ran that red light. It was just an act of God that nothing happened. And I remember calling my sponsor, and this was on a Friday. And I called my sponsor, and she said, I'm not going to AA anymore, but you need to get to primary purpose group. And you need to get a woman named Dara to be your sponsor. And I walked into primary purpose group that night at 7:30 for the meeting. And I sat down. I tried to come in real quietly. And I sat down and I looked to my left and she was sitting right next to me. And what was different about this time, I was willing to forgo everything everything and put this program first. And B, she told me, she said, are you ready to get serious this time? And I said, yes. And she said, can you follow directions? And I said, yes. And she said, well, we'll see. And the first time you balk, you're out of here. I wasn't nurtured into sobriety at all. I know that a lot of people do it that way, but for me, it was really important for me to just follow directions and not be looking for a new best friend or anything like that. And she got me started immediately. And this was on a Saturday night. And on Friday night, less than a week later, I was at the Salvation Army with her carrying the message. That's how quickly I worked the steps. I still have some step 9 amends that I haven't made, but I've put them in God's hands. And if, there's some people I've tried to reach that I can't locate from way back when. And there's some old boyfriends that my sponsor cautioned me about. And so I haven't done every single name on that list, but I've done by far the majority of them. But at that point, I'd only done about 5 or 6 amends, but I immediately was into step 10, 11, and 12. And all this happened in less than a week. And I can tell you, I haven't had a desire to drink since. I mean, not once. It's interesting. I've watched people, I tell people this a lot. So if I'm repeating myself, forgive me. I love to watch normal drinkers. It's like going to the zoo and looking at a strange animal, you know? So back when I used to go out before the coronavirus, when I actually went out a lot, I would sit and watch normal people have their margaritas or whatever and sip on them. And that's the most interest I've ever had in alcohol since I got sober, is just watching normal people drink and wondering how they can do that. I mean, that still puzzles me. I don't identify with it even a little. But I am free from the mental obsession. I know full well if I were to pick up a drink right now, in 10 minutes I'd be drunk. And in not much longer than that, I'd probably be in some serious trouble. And I'd probably die. And hopefully not take anybody down with me. I know the seriousness of my disease. And I followed directions to the letter. I have to tell you, there were a lot of times when she gave me directions that I really didn't think made sense, and I didn't agree with her. And I'm not sure every direction she gave me was right. But I believe with all my heart that by following her directions, God honored my willingness to set my own intellect aside and to set my own ego aside and do what I was told to do, whether I agreed with it or not. And that helped to sort of begin to rock my ego to sleep. I've learned that the most painful thing we deal with is our own ego. And our own, all of those character defects in column 4, the ones that cause me fear. Fear is a evil and corrosive thread. But all of those things, I have tools for dealing with them now. And I can stay calm, and I can be at perfect peace and ease, and I can live in quarantine without pulling my hair out. But that's pretty much how I started over again, and I did it fast.
Yeah, that sounds really fast. That's really cool to hear. There were a few things that whenever you were talking that came to my mind. But first, I want to ask, does anybody have any questions for Miss Cindy that they want to ask?
I have one.
Go ahead.
How did you get past all of your fears? How did you?
That's a tough question to ask, but the fears that I had listed were things like, I had a lot of fear around money. I had a lot of fear around the health of my husband. I had a lot of fear around the safety of my children, because I have 3 alcoholic children. And by this point, I was 50 years old. And so by this point, they were starting at it. And those were my major fears. And I have to tell you, my husband did indeed die. We really did lose everything financially. I mean, it isn't like those things didn't happen. I'm just telling you the truth. A lot of ups and downs in my life. I have lived in a mansion, and I've lived in a dumpy apartment. I've been the whole gamut, and I've had a lot of money, and I've had no money. And I think that what has settled my fears is really the spiritual growth that I am graced with the longer I stay sober, because I realize God's taking care of me no matter what. When I had the most money in the world that I ever had, I was drunk and wanting to jump off of the balcony of my bedroom. And so that kind of put things in perspective, that all the things that I had fears about basically boiled down to, am I going to be taken care of? You know? And I have a new employer today. And the God of my understanding cares about every single detail of my life. The God of my understanding is as close to me as my skin, my heart, my organs. And I didn't lose fear because things went my way. I lost fear because I really have faith today that it's going to be whatever it's going to be. And whatever it's going to be, I will still be okay. It truly comes from, when we say the 3rd step prayer and we offer ourselves to God to build with us and do with us as he would. The sentence before that says we were reborn. I became willing to let God rebuild me from the ground up. That didn't mean that I didn't screw up a lot. I sure did. Self-will raises its ugly head from time to time, and still does. Not nearly as much as it used to. And when I am really putting myself in God's hands, there's no reason to be afraid. Everything out in the world right now tells you to be very afraid. But I'm not. I have a little trepidation about it, about things that are going on. I still worry a little bit about money, but I don't worry the way I used to. I know I'm in God's hands. But that comes from working the steps and taking your fears to God and telling your sponsor about them so that you can see, because a lot of our fears are just things that are never going to happen. And then some of our fears are things that really do happen.
I have another question. Can I ask another
Sure.
question?
Love it.
Okay. What did you do personally to grow your spiritual world?
Well, first I worked the steps exactly the way they're outlined in the book. Okay. And then I began doing steps 10, 11, and 12. And at first, in the 11th step of prayer and meditation, my sponsor said, just read the black part on those pages. She wouldn't let me read anything else for a year because she wanted me in the book. And then finally, she let me start selecting other things. And those things help your spiritual life just in the excitement of the journey, the things I read. Like I love to go to the half-price bookstore and just pick out randomly books, devotional books and things like that I think might be helpful. But I never use that in place of what it says in 11 in the book. But the thing that's grown my spiritual life more than anything whatsoever is constant, continuous work with others. I mean, that is when I really experience God. I don't always get warm and fuzzy when I'm reading religious or whatever spiritual material. That sort of feeds the intellect. But the action of working with others is what builds our spiritual life. This is a spiritual program, and it's not an intellectual program. But because I like to feed my intellect, I do that, but I do it sparingly. Because all my life I've been living on what I think. And now I want to live on what God wants me to think. Because my ideas are so small compared to his.
Thanks
you for asking.
Yeah.
Thanks for being here.
So there's actually something that I kind of want to piggyback off of, but I'm not sure which one to ask first. That happens all the time for me. So I'm going to start with this one first. So it was brought up in accountability group today. Your name was brought up in a very good way, that they know if they get on a Maggie's meeting and they see you, that it's Monday. And because you are always there Monday at noon. And that gave her the inspiration or whatever she needed to realize that you've been sober for all of this time and you still have this service commitment, that she needs to do it too, which I thought was so cool. So I would just love for you to speak on your experience or the importance of having a service commitment and carrying the message. And if that's grown for you over the years, and if, and you have all of that good stuff.
Okay, that's a great question. When I first got sober, I attended Maggie's meetings at noon every Monday. I was not chairing, I just was attending. And even back in the 80s, before I worked the steps the way we work them out of the book, I used to go over to Maggie's and take paper towels and stuff like that. And that was my service work. And I thought that was the same thing as carrying the message, but it is not. It's service. It's a great thing to do. But carrying the message is an entirely different thing. But when I got sober this time, I had 3 commitments every week. I went to Maggie's as an attendee on Mondays. On Wednesdays, back then Timberlawn was still open, and I carried the message every morning on Wednesday mornings at Timberlawn. And I went with a group of friends. We carried the message together. And incidentally, that is how you build solid relationships in AA, is carrying the message together. It really isn't about having coffee at Starbucks. It really is about carrying the message together, because that's what really binds our friendship. So I did that on Wednesdays, and on Friday nights I went to the Salvation Army. Back in those days at Maggie's, and this was 18 years ago, there was only one person who worked there. Can you believe it? This one woman was the director, and there was no one else. Maybe somebody came in at night. And she asked me, because she had heard me speak in meetings, and she asked me to start chairing the Maggie's noon meeting. And this was probably in about 2004. And I've been chairing the noon Maggie's meeting ever since 2004. And Timberlawn went away. The Salvation Army had some changes going on. They didn't want big book studies for a while. So those kind of went away as a weekly commitment. But in the meantime, I now sponsor a lot of women. So I have that opportunity, and I have the opportunity to carry the message to women coming out of Maggie's. And also I get the privilege, I've had the privilege of traveling literally all over the world to carry the message. And during this coronavirus, I do a lot of Zoom meetings for friends of mine in other countries. That, I'm telling you guys, it's not how I would have planned my life. I can promise you that. But it is the absolute joy of my life. If I did not carry the message to another alcoholic, I am quite sure I would drink again. it is the secret handshake of AA. If I didn't get out of myself and make sure, probably 75% of the women I sponsored didn't stick. That's just the sad tale of recovery rates today. A lot of people get here too early. They're not really ready. That was true for me, I know. I went to AA way too early. I wasn't really willing to completely surrender myself to a higher power. I was just enjoying the discussion meetings, and the guys there were cute. But carrying the message is the most important thing that we do, I believe. It's putting my faith into action. And there is no greater thrill than when somebody really catches on and they become willing. A lot of people go through the motions of willingness, especially when they first get out of treatment, wherever they happen to be, because they're just sort of checking the boxes and making sure they do each assignment and whatever. But it really does become the basis of your life and how you live life. And I know in the beginning, if somebody had told me that, which they did, it sounded dreadful. That didn't sound like a life I wanted. But the more I did it, the more peace, the more freedom from fear, the more less concern. I don't have that much time to sit around and think about me and what's going to happen to me. In the Serenity Prayer, it says, God grant me the, how does it go? I just went blank. God grant me the
Serenity
to accept the things I cannot change. And I can't really change anything out there. The courage to change the things I can. And what I can change is my behavior with God's help. And that is getting out of myself and doing it. Like it doesn't even occur to me to slip a meeting, to slip a commitment. That was so ingrained in me. If I miss a Monday, it's because either I'm throwing up or I'm out of town. But now, even if I were to be out of town, I could do it on Zoom. But my little car, every Monday at 11 o'clock, I was in my car getting ready to drive to Maggie's. It was just as much a part of my life as breathing. And so I planned my life around those commitments. And I'm so grateful I did, because it allows me to be of service. And it also allows me to make certain, because if you know me at all, I want to make certain that every woman I ever come into contact with understands what the hell is wrong with them. Because we come in as alcoholics never really fully grasping that. We know something's wrong, but we think it's because of every other reason under the sun, like I was mistreated as a child, or I had controlling husband, or I had this or that, or you name it. We think that these external events have caused us to become this way. And the big aha is when you finally get that you have an incurable disease. We can recover from it, that it is a serious, serious, deadly disease. And I just want to make sure everybody knows that, who I come into contact with. Not to scare people. You can't scare us into sobriety. But we need to understand and concede to our innermost selves exactly what the problem is and exactly what the solution is. And in time, what you'll discover is it really has been an enormous gift to be an alcoholic, because it has fleshed out my life into a purpose greater than, what's more important than helping a woman not die from alcoholism? Put us up there at MD Anderson with cancer specialists, with channeling God's power through us, we are able to help others not die and kill others with them.
Thank you, Cindy. Anybody else? Okay, so this is also one of the things I wanted to ask you too, is you talked about being at perfect peace and ease, which is such an amazing promise that we get from this program. When did you realize that you had perfect peace and ease?
I don't know. I really can't remember the first time I realized that. But I certainly realize it now because I am alone. I'm at perfect peace and ease. When I first got sober, I was 50, and I guess two of my kids were in college and one was still at home. And there was still a lot of stuff going on in my household. So I wasn't alone that often. But I treasured the times that I could be alone. I absolutely treasured them. And it started in prayer and meditation, in the morning and at night, because that was a time I carved out to be alone no matter what. And I was at perfect peace and ease during that time. My daughter Caroline taught me this thing that her sponsor had taught her, and that is to sit quietly and breathe in God and breathe out Cindy. And that has been a real lifesaver for me. I don't know if you guys are like me, but I know a lot of alcoholic women who've had this. When I was drinking, or before I got sober, even when I was sober but hadn't gotten sober, people were always looking at me and saying, "Would you breathe?" I would forget to breathe, because of fear, that constant fear. And I would just be holding my breath. And so even to this day, I have to remember to deep breathe. And when I do that, I am at perfect peace and ease, regardless of what's happening. There have been some moments, and not even very long ago, when I was absolutely a basket case worried about this situation or that situation or whatever, because there's been a lot of drama in my household. But I've even learned to breathe through that, when awful things are happening, personal things. But I couldn't tell you the day or the week or the month, but it started with my morning meditation and my evening meditation. Realizing that I could sit there alone, and it's not difficult at all. But I'm kind of an introvert anyway. But when I was young, I have to remember this. When I was young, I couldn't stand to be alone. Would not be alone. I would be with anybody rather than be alone. And that was all involved with alcohol. But being alone when I was a young person before I got sober was just painful. I didn't know how to do it. But it does start with the spending time alone with God in the morning and at night. And then throughout the day, if the day gets difficult, taking time out. And then you're able to carry it through the day.
I think that's great. Thank you so much for touching on the importance of the prayer and meditation at morning and at night. So thank you.
It's critical. It's critical. And it's the same thing. Like every morning I get up and I come and sit right where I'm sitting now, and I do prayer and meditation in the morning. And sometimes I'm tempted to look at Facebook first, or read something else first, or because I'll tell you, the minute I wake up, self-pity is knocking at my door. And it doesn't always look like self-pity. It looks like some fact, like this is going to happen and we're all going to be ruined. So when I get up in the morning, the minute I get up, I ask God to divorce my thinking from self-pity, dishonest, and self-seeking motives. And then I get my coffee, and then I sit down, and then I spend time with God.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Shoot.
Would you say that 10-stepping enlarges your spiritual life? And if yes, how has it enlarged your spiritual life? And what is a 10-step? Like, how do you 10-step? What does that look like for you? I know, like, it changes. Like, I don't know about changes, but in the beginning, 10-stepping every single day. And I'm just finding so much more about myself, a lot of fear in 10-stepping. But I know that when I do it, I'm getting close to God.
Okay. In the beginning, I 10-stepped everything. I remember, like, this is just to show you what a kind of person I was. I remember walking down the street, and this is really early in sobriety, and I'm walking down the street, and there's this overweight lady in front of me wearing high heels, and she wasn't walking fast enough. And I was so angry that she was wearing high heels. What a stupid thing to do. And I had to immediately call my sponsor with that. Why did that bother me? You know, who was I to play God? In the beginning, it was really so helpful because it allowed me, I couldn't see my character defects. I saw everything as a fact rather than something that's being filtered through my own selfishness and self-centeredness. It was a fact. It is stupid to wear high heels if you're overweight. I mean, that's a horrible thing for me to say out loud right now, but that was something that was really bugging me that day. And in the beginning, for many, many years, my 10th steps were pretty frequent. And then they weren't as frequent. But at this point in time, I don't go anywhere. So I don't have any resentments or fears or anything going. I mean, I'm just here. But I do talk. What happened with me is my sponsor, who was my sponsor for the first 10 years, left AA for other things, not to drink, but she became more involved in church. And then my next sponsor was Cliff, who founded Primary Purpose Group, and then he died. And now Hannah's my sponsor, but it was sort of weird because I had been sponsoring her. So she became my sponsor. And now my 10th steps are a little bit different. But in the beginning, it was so critical because I could not see my part in so much of it. Because so much of what I was seeing, I thought was a value that everyone shared. You know, like everybody would think it's stupid to wear high heels if you're overweight. That sounds so awful, and I'm sorry for that to be on a recording, but that's just how trite my life was, how judgmental I was. And by doing 10th steps, I saw more and more the truth about myself and became more, you know, that 6 and 7 expands the longer we stay sober. In the beginning, of course, I want God to take everything, but it doesn't vanish overnight, our character defects. And that's why it's important to do step 10. Because the only way I can do it now is I have to go to God first and ask him to remove, just like it says in the book, we continue to watch for selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear. We ask God at once to remove them. We tell someone about it, or discuss it with someone. And I still do that to this day. I discuss it with someone. And make amends if I've caused harm, but I don't ever make an amend until I talk about it with somebody, because sometimes my amends are just to get the monkey off my back, and they're not necessary, or they're not for the right reasons. So I really need guidance in making the amend. And then the next thing it says, and then we turn our thoughts to someone we can help. And that fascinates me to this day, because it doesn't say, then go feel guilty about all your selfishness and self-centeredness. It says, turn your thoughts to someone you can help, because I don't believe the God of my understanding wants to give me a shame attack, right? It's not about shame. It's about repairing. It's about first recognizing my defective character, which always comes from self-centered fear, always, always, always. And it may manifest itself as a resentment, or it may manifest itself in just being rude or angry to somebody. But at the root of it is always self-centeredness, driven by 1,000 forms of fear. And so 10th stepping is a really valuable tool. And I'm glad you're using it, because it's really important. Because I mean, how free do you want to be? You know, I want to be free. I want to be free as a bird. And so I can't afford resentments. But at the risk of repeating myself, in the beginning, I didn't recognize those things as resentments. I thought that they were just facts. No. Another example I give people that's silly is that I really thought that everybody folded towels a certain way. And I got very resentful because someone wasn't folding towels the way I wanted them folded. Now I don't care how anybody folds towels. But see, in my mind, I really thought everybody shared that value. So it wasn't selfishness on my part. It's just, you're not following the rules. You know? I mean, that's how crazy I thought, you know? And getting free of that, the freedom is you don't get bothered so much. I mean, when somebody is acting crazy, I don't have to jump in there. I just move. I don't have to get hung up in all the drama that's going on. I don't have to play God. And for so long, I thought it was my business. It was my business to straighten you out. It was my business because, after all, I'm a mother, I'm a teacher, I'm supposed to do that. No. And it's a slow process, but I really encourage everyone who's new to realize what we really are in the business of doing here is rocking our egos to sleep and really letting God be in charge. And, in the beginning, it seems like, well, so I don't have any responsibility for anything. No, you have a responsibility for whatever you're committed to do. You do. But you don't have to set the world straight. God can do this. He's never asked me to be his personal assistant. I'm waiting. But he hasn't. Does that make sense?
That's good. That's great. Anybody else? Okay. So, I mean, you kind of a little bit touched on this, but something that comes up in accountability a lot is, well, I've been sober this long. I shouldn't feel this way, or I shouldn't think this way, or I shouldn't act this way, or I know what my sponsor is going to tell me, or there's a lot of this, I shouldn't have these thoughts. I shouldn't do these things because I've been through the steps, or because I've been sober this amount of time. What would you say to those ladies?
I'd say that's ego on steroids.
I love that.
We don't get to judge other people, and we don't get to judge ourselves. I can assure you that I screw up on a daily basis. But that's because I'm a human. We don't sober up and get perfect, and we don't sober up. And this thing about, I know what my sponsor is going to tell me. No, you don't. I mean, you're playing God to the max when you do that. And the I should and I shouldn't are old ideas. Those are old ideas that we have to let go of. If we've really surrendered our life to God, we don't get to play judge and jury on this deal. And I promise you, when you screw up and you do something wrong, really screw something up or hurt somebody's feelings or something, we have a way to take care of that. But it also becomes kind of something I giggle at. I giggle at my imperfections. I don't, because that's what makes me a person, a human being. We get, in the early days, where we are now, where you all are now, is if I work the 12 steps and have a spiritual awakening, then everything's going to be fine. No. What we're working to do is get connected to God and let him decide what's going to be my path. Not me decide, well, I've got to do 4 good deeds today or anything like that. I mean, even in the 11th step upon awakening, we consider our plans for the day. We just consider them because God may have some other things planned. But these things we don't want. In the beginning, it's such an old idea that we've carried with ourselves for so long that I'm going to catch me doing something wrong before someone else points it out. Right? And that's the ego on steroids. I'm going to confess to you, my brothers and sisters, before somebody else has an opportunity to say, I think that's selfish. Because we don't want somebody else to tell us something. And I can promise you that I don't know an alcoholic yet who isn't very, very bright. We're bright people. We're not lacking on information. What we're lacking on is action. And what we're lacking on is thinking of others rather than thinking of ourselves. And all that is self-pity when I'm sitting there saying, I really messed up and I'm so awful and surely by now I'd know better. No, you will never. I mean, I'm almost 68 years old. And I mean, one of the nice things about getting older is that you're not so hard on yourself. It's much easier to not judge yourself. It'll wear you out.
Mm-hmm.
And me, when I first got sober in 99, I was working so hard on being the best possible teacher that anybody had ever met, that I wound up drinking cough syrup. So the perfectionism is something we all suffer from, but it's such a delusional way of thinking, because who among us is perfect? And I'll tell you, if I ever got perfect, I wouldn't need God. And he designed us with flaws. He designed us that way because who's going to reach out for God if everything's going perfectly? I had to be beaten to a pulp before I was willing to surrender.
I have another question.
Okay.
Okay. In the back of the book, it says that we know that our book is meant to be suggestive only, that we know only very little, that more will be disclosed to us. Would you say that now more is still being disclosed to you?
In different ways. The big book itself, the directions in the big book are firm. They're solid. They don't change. More is revealed to us as we learn to get along with people. One of the things that happened was that more was revealed was the development of the traditions. And the traditions are 12 traditions that were established on the anvils of experience, quote unquote, on how to get along as a group. Because you put a bunch of alcoholics in a room together, and somebody's not going to like somebody, and there's going to be all kind of division happening. And the traditions were written to prevent that division from happening. So more was revealed. But more is revealed every day. I mean, not the nuts and bolts of how to work the program, but the appreciation of things, the gratitude for things that you hadn't thought about before. I mean, just, little things like actually hearing a bird sing, or some piece of music that you love and really hearing it like for the first time. seeing things in people that I used to get annoyed with people in meetings who weren't saying what I thought they should be saying. And my sponsor told me to just focus on their eyelashes. And when I did that, it allowed me to see them as human beings rather than as my sidekicks, right? That they are real human beings. Those kind of things are what's been more revealed. But the steps themselves, I think those are locked in stone. But more is revealed. You know, the more we learn about ourselves, the more we learn about others, the more we are able to really put our faith in God.
Page is depth and weight.
Yes.
It's Anonymous Big Book.
And this is the most depth and weight thing I've ever experienced in my life. If you consider yourself a person who seeks deep, you're in the right place, because you can go really deep and you can go really wide too. And every day we learn something. And just for me personally, what I've been learning just in the last few days are some things that were old ideas that I thought were facts and really believed with all my heart, and I would have bet my life on them. And I come to find out I was wrong. That isn't a fact. And it's humbling, but it also makes me giggle, because it makes me go, oh God, what else have I been believing that isn't true?
Great.
And I think Zoom meetings more will be revealed, right? Using this kind of technology. Can you imagine Bill and Bob being able to visualize this kind of outreach to other alcoholics on little pictures of the Brady Bunch? I mean, more is revealed in every way, in every day.
Well, we're getting to the top of the hour. As always, great stuff. I didn't even get to talk to you about, I was trying to recreate some of the moments from last time to make sure we get them in this time for the recording. But my plans and designs, they never work out very well. But I think this has all been really, really good. So is there, before I ask the wrap-up question, is there any other questions that anybody has? Okay. So my wrap-up question is, if you could leave us on one takeaway that you'd want us to take away from this interview with you, that you'd want us to hear, what would that one takeaway you want to leave us with?
Take your brains off, set them aside, and follow directions. That's the most important thing that you can do, because it is the most counterintuitive thing that we do, is to set our own thinking aside and just do the work in the book. That makes the difference between success and failure. At least that's what made the difference between success and failure with me. When I was truly willing to be 100% honest with my sponsor and follow exactly what she told me to do. And I did not balk, and I just did it. And I did not argue. I just did it. Just do it. Nike.
Oh, so good. All right. Thank you so much for being here. That went by quick. Didn't it go by quick? That was awesome.
Yeah, good. Thanks,
Thank you,
Cindy.
Cindy. That was
Well,
wonderful.
thank you for having me. It was an honor and a privilege, and I love all of you so much. And I love the Magdalen House. And just do it. Okay.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
We hope you've enjoyed this From the Vault re-release of the Magdalen House podcast. Tune in every first and third Wednesday for a new release from one of our 3 podcast series. To learn more about the Magdalen House and the services we offer, visit magdalenhouse.org or follow us on your favorite social media channels by searching for the Magdalen House.